Hey, what's up guys? This is David Chase Taylor of 911truther.org. Today is July 7th, 2020. So I'm making this video because there's virtually a 100% chance that President Trump resigns in July of 2020. Most likely by July 25th, which marks exactly 100 days prior to the US presidential election on November 3rd, 2020. So basically it appears that the CIA has to make a choice either to go with Trump as a Republican candidate or do a bait and switch, which I'll talk about in a second, or stage some sort of a coup d'etat whereby the whole entire US Democratic election process is negated. So that being said, the CIA may resort to Plan B, which would entail a Trump-related death event due to so-called natural causes, cancer, heart attack, COVID-19, old age, etc. B, a Trump stroke or paralyzation, or C, some sort of diagnosis of some previously undiagnosed medical condition such as MS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's disease, etc. That may be in respect to Trump, his Vice President Pence, or members of Trump's family as well. So again, it is imperative to note that I am not a Trump supporter, but I've been put in this precarious position to basically keep Trump in office and to keep him alive for that matter, specifically to thwart off the impending Obama dictatorship and also keep the sanctity of the U.S. election process intact. Nevertheless, the most likely Trump resignation scenarios, as it stands as of today, July 7th, 2020, prior to the U.S. presidential election on November 3rd, is not in specific order. Is Trumpgate. There's this, basically the CIA created this narrative that there's this video floating around allegedly in Russia of Trump engaging in some sort of sexual activity, possibly with minors. A Trump resignation due to sexual assault charges, possibly in respect to this 13-year-old girl that's linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Trump may be forced to resign after being charged with murder or links to the Jeffrey Epstein suicide assassination. There was just an arrest this last week of one of Epstein's cohorts. I forget her name, but it just happened this week. Trump's IRS tax returns, he may be forced out of office in the event that those come to light. There's also the possibility that something would happen to Mike Pence, his family, or Trump's family in respect to business matters, such as we saw with Ukraine, with links to Ukraine, or some sort of sickness or death event targeting the Trump family, such as Barron, Ivanka, Nikki, or Melania, that would basically be the pretext for Trump to resign from office. There's also the real possibility that Trump would be forced to resign due to this second wave of this COVID-19 pandemic, whereby he's allegedly over his head and he resigns because he feels like he can't handle it. Twittergate, basically where he used an executive order to basically go after Twitter, so he may be forced to resign due to abuse of power. The American riots, basically, that he would resign in order to keep the peace and to basically to appease this particular movement. Teargate, where he basically authorized the use of tear gas on protesters in Washington, so he may be forced to resign for abuse of power. And then in the event that none of the 9 aforementioned scenarios are a feasible option for the CIA, it's highly likely that they would execute what I call a 1-2 punch. So basically, they would stage some sort of watershed moment, watershed event as a pretext for a same-day Trump resignation or a next-day Trump resignation. So basically something terrible, or some leaked video, or some deep fake or fake news or something would happen, and then Trump would immediately resign. That would obviously be designed to circumvent reports by yours truly, detailing that the Swiss CIA is basically staging this stuff to get rid of President Trump. That being said, the single most likely Trump resignation would come in the aftermath of an Obama military coup. This is where top brass military commanders such as the Joint Chief of Staff basically betray their oath and stage some sort of a treasonous coup whereby Trump is either arrested or forced to resign. Basically, it's a hijack of the US government by the CIA to basically put Obama back into power as a temporary president, which will turn into a prolonged third term. So for those of you that don't know or simply forgot, back on October 12th of 2016, I published a report entitled Trump Hoax Exposed, 10 Reasons Why Jeb Bush Will Replace Donald Trump as a Republican Candidate for the U.S. Presidential Election on November 8th, 2016. The link is in the description of this video. So basically, it is imperative to know that Trump was never ever supposed to be president and was only put into power because the CIA was unable to execute a bait and switch at the last minute, which would have put a third Bush in the White House. And this notion is corroborated by the fact that the CIA is now trying to do the same exact thing, except with Jeb Bush's son, George P. Bush, who is the Land Commissioner of Texas. So similar to the 2016 plot, the CIA plans to have Trump basically resign prior to the November 3rd, 2020 election under the guise of passing the torch to the younger George P. Bush. So basically this is what I call a switcheroo coup. It's basically where Trump's popularity is such that he would likely win or possibly win the next election, and so basically they want to capitalize on that momentum that he had going into the 2016 election as well as the 2020 election and basically hijack it and give it to a Bush. So interestingly, George Bush stated when he endorsed Trump back on June 9th, 2020, that Trump was the only thing standing between America and socialism. So based off this statement, it can be deduced that the CIA plans on importing a Republican form of Obamanism, basically some form of communism, into the United States via the half-Cuban Bush, George P. Bush. So in other words, it's basically communism in America under right-wing cover. So basically, it's basically Obama light, if you will. So in the unlikely event that the Trump presidency remains unscathed until the November 3rd, 2020 U.S. presidential election, Trump's opponent will not be Joe Biden. So I repeat, Joe Biden will resign from his current position as the 2020 Democratic presidential candidate prior to the November 3rd, 2020 election. You can write that down. So exactly why Biden will step down from his position is obviously not yet known, but it will most likely be for medical or mental health reasons or for these pending sexual assault allegations, which Biden's campaign manager, Kate Bedingfield, no pun intended, officially denied back on April 12th, 2020. So basically, Biden is can barely string two sentences together, and there's all these photos of him groping young girls. So needless to say, Trump would have a heyday with him in a debate. So in the event that Biden steps down as expected, there are 3 or 4 potential candidates waiting in the wings as a Democratic nominee for the 2020 election. So firstly, there's Joseph P. Kennedy III, a U.S. congressman from Massachusetts, who gave the Democratic response for the 2020 State of the Union speech. Basically, excuse me, that was in 2018. He gave the Democratic response. So generally, the next in line to become president for each party generally gives those responses in the Democratic or Republican State of the Union speeches. And he would likely beat Trump fair and square in an election if he's not neutralized by the CIA like JFK and RFK before him. Secondly, there is Michelle Obama, a Harvard-trained lawyer who has really no political experience. Interestingly, Biden has repeatedly stated that he would have a female vice president, so it appears that Michelle may be the heir apparent to the Democratic Party when Biden steps down, and this would obviously give Obama a de facto third and fourth, possibly fourth term as president. Lastly, there's two wild cards, which are Oprah and Rosie O'Donnell, and they are a realistic possibility, albeit highly unlikely. So anyways, I just wanted to say I've been following politics my whole life, and I even have a minor in political science from San Diego State University, and I can assure you that there has never ever been a time like this in American history where both candidates for either party are in flux roughly 100 days prior to the election. And this uncertainty is no mistake. It's because the CIA is desperately trying to turn America from a democratic country into an authoritative dictatorship. And that is specifically why on July 6, 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that essentially that the Electoral College, which has been in play for over 200 years, is essentially irrelevant in that states can sue their given electorates to enforce the popular vote. So in other words, whoever is the most popular now is going to be president. Obviously, this would be challenged in a court of law, which would further denigrate the entire election process because it would end up in courts for years. So essentially, the Supreme Court decision essentially nullifies the power of the states and opens the door to a cult of personality like Obama, who must only appeal to the lowest common denominator in order to become president. And next thing you know, the Supreme Court may rule that Obama can run for a third term. I mean, this is basically the foundation of the democratic system in America is basically being systematically dismantled by the CIA. So, in closing, I should note that I do not vote in absentia or otherwise. I haven't since 2008. Because in my opinion, if voting changed anything, it would be illegal. And as Stalin once said, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. And in this particular matter, as with all countries, it's the CIA. So it's my personal opinion, as being a student of politics that and an English teacher, that the word vote was likely derived from the term vet, which means to find out. That's the definition of vet, is to find out. So it is my personal opinion that voting is just a massive CIA intelligence operation designed to basically find out what the public is thinking so that they can fuck them better. That is why no matter which country you live in, every single ballot that people vote on has far-ranging issues from far left to far right. It's basically a spectrum to basically find out what the people want in order so that the CIA can manipulate them better. So basically, if you know what a given people or a particular region, which way they lean, whether it's right or left, or what they want, then you know how to basically play them better. Anyways, I digress. So in the event that Trump resigns under any circumstance, or he or his family or the vice president's family are targeted by the CIA prior to the U.S. presidential election on November 3rd, 2020, I kindly ask that you share this video with the Democratic Party, especially local chapters, with the Republican Party, especially local chapters, police agencies across America, the intelligence community and the military community. And let's make Swiss interference in America and our election process a thing of the past. Peace.